welcome to On Point. I'm Leslie Estrada. It's been almost 4 years since the Aliso Canyon gas blowout, the largest environmental disaster in American history. And people who lived in the city of Porter Ranch say they have been affected mentally, physically, financially, and politically.
When it first happened, I got these messages left on a machine: close your windows, shut your doors, and don't go outside. Well, I didn't know what was happening. I got onto Facebook and read all this stuff, and I never realized, I've lived here 45 years, and I've never realized what was up in that monster mountain.
We've lived in the same place for 22 years now. It wasn't bothering us. We didn't see anything coming at us.
I live just right here in Chatsworth. We got it, we started smelling it for a few days, but it went away after a while, so.
It was affecting some people that live mostly over this way in Porter Ranch, and it went over to Granada and Northridge a little bit. It was still really bad for a majority of people.
The chemicals released by the blowout have caused many health problems for the residents, but research is still being conducted, and SoCalGas hasn't even told residents exactly what chemicals leaked. Hundreds of lawsuits have been filed not only by residents, but also by some Los Angeles County firefighters who helped the residents evacuate.
A lot of people were affected, people were getting sick, Gas company was trying to say they had it under control.
My family suffered from nosebleeds, headaches, stomach aches, fatigue, really bad fatigue.
Over 100 metric tons of gas was released into the atmosphere, and they're trying to cover it up. The list of the chemicals that are hurting and harming people. What caused it, we still don't know. Are we prepared for the next possible disaster, the next blowout? Why didn't they replace the gas valves in the late 1970s?
Senator Henry Stern has been doing a lot to help us out, but there's only so much he can do. It's not safe for any community to be that close to that much gas.
Many who lived in Porter Ranch did leave the area temporarily, and many say they eventually decided to relocate.
The best solution would be to shut it down. Who are we blaming? SoCalGas, Sempra, the CPUC, all these entities that were supposed to help us have not been helping us. The AQMD, all these, they don't really help us.
We can't figure out what happened 4 years after the study, that a lot of the evidence is gone. And I have to say that public health seems to be amenable with that idea.
I wish we would have moved out. Maybe I would feel better today, but with what's going on, they still withdraw a lot. We still will walk out and smell it. And so we have to call the AQMD and all this, and it's just not right. They need to close it down. It's not healthy for anybody.
We asked SoCalGas for comments, and we did not hear back from them. On Point's Matt Roth has more on the story.
Thank you, Leslie. Now let's welcome our first guest. We have Loraine Lundquist, a CSUN professor, an educator, and scientist.
Hi, Matt.
Hi. And we also have a North Valley resident, Cheri Derohanian.
Hi, Matt. Nice to be here today.
Thank you for being here. Now, you guys were both here about 3 years ago. Are you still worried about this situation?
Absolutely. I'm still worried about this situation. It's still affecting residents in my neighborhood. It's still leaking. It's still causing all kinds of problems, and it's still a risk when it comes to earthquake hazard. It's still a risk for fire hazard, and we are still working to get the facility shut down.
What about you, Cheri?
I'm so worried because of the government and all the agencies. They don't see the gravity of the situation, and they let this go on in the first place. And there's 100 and something other wells up there. I'm not sure how many are storing gas, but this could happen again. And if we had another earthquake like the Northridge quake or bigger, we're in big trouble.
Yeah. So tell us what it was like to go through this experience, Cheri, and what happened, and when did you realize that something was wrong?
Well, on October 23rd, that was a Friday afternoon when it happened. I didn't really notice until the next morning. We started smelling gas, and we all thought, oh, someone's having a barbecue and they forgot to shut their gas off, or we don't know what, maybe just a small line in the house, just normal gas leak. But when it continued for day after day, we didn't know what was going on. And my kids were running the mile that week in school, and the school didn't know, nobody knew. And when it finally came out, it was ridiculous that they didn't have a way to tell the residents.
Yeah. Okay, so I have another question for you, Loraine. So why, as a scientist, why is methane so dangerous?
Well, methane is a problem globally because it's a greenhouse gas, which means it causes warming. In fact, this disaster was the largest climate disaster in U.S. history. It was bigger even than the BP oil fires, and it was a remarkable thing that happened to our community. And by the way, 8,000 households in our community were displaced for 7 months, and 2 schools had to be moved. So it was a major, major deal here in the North Valley. But the biggest problem in terms of the local effects on people's health is not the methane. It's all the other stuff that was released with the methane, because this methane is stored in depleted oil wells. And it has other chemicals that are included in it, which, by the way, SoCalGas is not required to release to the community. So we don't actually know what all chemicals are stored in there. But we do know there are toxic, volatile organic chemicals that occur in oil, things like benzene, that causes cancer, and that is a real problem for the community and for our health.
Okay, so what is a safer way to supply this energy?
Well, the really interesting thing is that we haven't needed this gas storage facility for the last 4 years, hardly at all. It's for storage. It's not a supply of energy. And there are a lot of states like Arizona and Nevada that don't store gas at all. And in fact, we have enough pipeline capacity to meet our demands. So you don't necessarily need to store gas here at all. In fact, one of the things that the company did is that they would make the storage available for investors who wanted to buy gas on the market when the price is high, when the price is low, and sell it when the price is high and make money. And so this is the kind of thing we don't actually need in our community. But if you want to look at better ways to store energy, cleaner energy storage methods, you can look at things like batteries. You can look at things like pumping water, literally pumping water uphill when we have extra electricity during the day when the sun is shining and we have lots of solar panels that are generating electricity, and then generating electricity at night when the sun isn't shining just by letting the water flow downhill. There are all kinds of amazing technologies out there that are very simple and that are in use all over the country and all over the world that we can use to store energy cleanly.
Yeah. So now the Trump administration has released new regulations on methane gas. So tell us a little bit about that and what your thoughts on it are.
Well, it's not new regulations. They've actually proposed taking away the regulations that the Obama administration put in. So partly as a result of this disaster here in our community, just 5 miles from CSUN, the Obama administration decided we need to start regulating storage of natural gas and transmission of natural gas, which there were no regulations on it at all before. And so they had a committee of experts that put together a proposal, and they implemented new regulations. And now the Trump administration is proposing taking them off and making it so we don't have any regulations at all again. And amazingly, not only are activists and people who've been affected by things like this upset about this, but even the big energy companies have said they don't want this to happen because they are so, people like Exxon and Shell, they're so invested in natural gas and painting natural gas as a clean fuel that they don't even want to have a situation where you're having more leaks.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts about the regulation, Cheri?
Well, I actually flew up to the California Air Resources Board about 5 months after the well was sealed, and we were trying to, just residents and people in the North Valley area. I happened to be on the Porter Ranch Neighborhood Council at the time, and the Environmental Defense Fund reached out to me and some other activists and bought us a plane ticket to fly up and testify as to why the regulations should not be loosened, because it was an important step-down rule for all of California, that they were going to let more emissions go out and be free to release emitted toxins than were presently in place. And we thought that the ones presently in place weren't stringent enough. So the fact that we went up there helped a lot. About 8 of us from Porter Ranch testified. We were very effective. We were quoted in the Sacramento Bee newspaper, and it was really made a difference. And that was just an example of how 1 or 2 or 8 citizens can take action and really make a difference.
Yeah. So do you think the gas blowout still affects the community? And do you know anyone, or have you filed any lawsuits?
Yes, as a matter of fact, where I lived in Porter Ranch at the time, we were a block from the gate that is SoCalGas's entrance. Mm-hmm. And my kids went to school that was less than 4 blocks from the entrance. One of the schools, there were 1,800 students evacuated at the time, 1,100 students out of 2 Porter Ranch schools. And to this day, there are 5 teachers at Castle Bay Elementary that we know had no cancer history in their families ever, and 5 got cancer out of 34 teachers on that campus. And one or 2 of them were close friends of mine, and 1 passed away. And there's still residents that I hear talking about how they're wheezing, and every time there's a little bit of a leak, it affects their eyes tear up, they get a skin rash, so it's ongoing. That's why I moved. I moved to Granada Hills to get further away from the gas leak. I'm 5 miles further, and also because my kids wanted to go to Granada High School.
Have your family or neighbors recovered well till to this day? Have they gotten a lot better?
My close friends and relatives have recovered. We had relocated, but I do know people that I'm friends with, that I communicate with, weekly and periodically, and they're still having conditions. And we all filed lawsuits. I don't know how many, but out of 30,000 Porter Ranch residents alone, at least 10,000 have filed lawsuits.
Wow. All right. So this question's for both of you guys. Do you think the local or federal government has done anything beneficial to help with this issue, or at least should do something?
Well, our state representatives have worked pretty hard, not hard enough because we still have the facility open, but have been pushing for new regulations for better protections for residents. But, part of why I ended up getting into politics, I actually am running for city council, is because our council member was so unresponsive to the community throughout this whole debacle. And it was really disheartening to see the way that we were treated as constituents. And so I'm actually going to be on the ballot in March, when we go and vote for the presidential primary. I'll be running for this seat.
Okay, what are your thoughts, Cheri?
Well, I understand that the city councilman at the time he was a Republican, so he couldn't help it. But Senator Stern, who's a Democrat in my neck of the woods, he worked very hard on his bill to stop the fuel injections. Loraine here went up to one of his committee hearings and testified on behalf of Senator Stern, and I personally campaigned for him so hard. I lived in a gated community of 1,200 residents, and I think I talked to at least 600 or 800 of them because I know all those people too. And the fact that he got elected and he wrote this legislation, and I hope someday he's governor, because he will do something. He is so in favor of green energy, it's not funny.
Is there anything else you'd like to add about that you think is important?
Well, I think that the then Governor Brown, having a sister on the Sempra board, Sempra is the parent company of SoCalGas, there was a conflict right there, and so there was a delay in him doing anything about an emergency plan or anything like that. And on down, we get down all the way to local Council District 12. He did a lot of community meetings, but it didn't help stop the gas leak or have future protections.
Okay. That's all we have time for. Thank you both, and we'll be back right after this.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Matt.
What are you doing in there?
What's that?
I wouldn't do that. What are you doing? What are you looking for?
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Julie was always a voracious reader. She'd carry 2 novels on an airplane because she'd read one on a 3-4 hour ride. And at some point, I began to notice that she would read a page and couldn't remember what she had just read, and she'd have to go back and read it again.
I don't remember much these days after I read, but less does for me, and I love it.
Here's to the things that can keep us safe. And now, those that we carry with us everywhere will bring us wireless emergency alerts. With the unique sound and vibration, you'll be in the know, wherever you are.
Welcome back. Let's welcome our new guest for the second panel. We have Becca Lieb from the Sunrise Movement, and we have Matt Pakucko, co-founder of Save Porter Ranch. Now, as activists, what are you both fighting for? And let's start with you, Becca.
So I'm a member of the Sunrise Movement, and it's a youth-led climate justice movement, and we're just basically fighting to mitigate the effects of climate change as much as possible, and to do that in a just way for communities and for laborers.
What about you, Matt? What are you fighting for?
Well, Save Porter Ranch is local residents. We were founded a year and a half before the gas blowout, and we've been on the front lines ever since. Our main goal is to shut that place down permanently because of all the problems that it's still causing to this very day that you heard only a tiny bit from the earlier guests. There's still people getting sick. That place still leaks regularly. We have our own gas monitor system to tell when that's happening. So we just need to protect the whole North Valley. That place needs to be shut down, and it can be shut down. And it actually has been shut down and not used, except when SoCal Gas manipulated the gas supply. It has not been needed for gas since the gas blowout.
So this question is actually for you, Matt. Has the community been responsive to help shut down Aliso Canyon?
The community, in the very beginning, it was a lot of community support because obviously there was a big problem and people were getting sick, horribly sick. And so there's a lot of community support. But over time, here's the problem. A lot of people actually moved away because they're too sick to live there. People are getting worn down financially, mentally, with fighting against our biggest enemy, which is our regulators and our elected officials. People are tired of not being taken care of by those people like they should. So support has diminished. Because it's the long game, and that's how these companies win this, because people don't stick to their guns and keep fighting. And the law of attrition, it usually works in their favor. So that's why more people need to get involved in this. That's how we win.
Yeah. So I have a question for both of you. Let's hear from you first, Becca. What are some possible solutions to prevent this from happening again?
I think that it's really telling that the facility wasn't really needed in the time span of when the blowout happened until now. And yeah, like some solutions would be to shut it down and to fully embrace a transition to clean and renewable energy. And you know, it's sort of interesting. I see, like, even with environmental groups will put forward case studies looking at methane leaks and how do we combat methane leaks in order to reduce our greenhouse gas emission, and where the message is kind of muddled. And you know, I think, like, right now, like, it's pretty clear, especially with the Eland, the Eland study or the Eland solar power project that was passed a week and a half ago by the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. We're going to now generate 7% of our electricity from that one solar project, which is really remarkable. And the more that we get bogged down and confused by a battle of semantics with you know, talking about gas and methane leaks and how can we fix that problem by fixing the leaks in a very myopic way, the more we will double down on this infrastructure, this fossil fuel infrastructure that isn't really an investment in our government and in our society. And it's not a good investment because we know that we only have 11 or 10 and a half years to completely transform our economy if we're going to have human civilization be able to function and in a way that resembles normal. So it just, to me, it makes no sense to fix and prevent a blowout by fixing individual leaks. It really requires systemic change and a transition off of these dirty fuels that make people sick.
What about you, Matt? What are some possible solutions?
Well, like she said, the transition to clean energy, that's the way that it's going right now. That's the way that this planet has to go. So shutting down fields like that place has already been proven to not be needed. So by shutting that place down permanently, what we get is what has already happened to a large degree, a downstream change in the whole energy grid. A lot of clean energy has come online, a lot of battery storage has come online fast as soon as that gas blowout happened because they needed it. So suddenly, oh, they were able to do it. So that's what needs to be done. Let's shut that place down because it's affecting the whole North San Fernando Valley. And then we move on to the next one.
All right, so this question is specifically for you, Becca. So how does this issue tie to climate change in general?
Wow, so the Aliso Canyon gas blowout was actually one of the perfect examples of how climate change is both an issue that affects us in the long term and also an issue that affects us in the immediate short term. And, you know, like, the reason why this gas blowout happened is that we are using gas. And I mean, like, how does it tie to climate change? Like, methane has, you know, as Dr. Lundquist mentioned, is a greenhouse gas. Within a 100-year time frame after it's released into the atmosphere, it's something like 50 or 80 times the warming potential of carbon dioxide, and then it eventually deteriorates. And I think it deteriorates into carbon dioxide. So, you know, in a direct way, releasing the largest release of methane in the history of our country, and I think even in the history of the world, has a profound impact on climate change. And with all these things, like, you know, all of these incremental choices, the incremental choice to transition to clean renewable energy and to you know, past the Eland Solar Project, or the incremental lack of a choice to emit all of this methane into the atmosphere. Like, unfortunately, we don't know exactly what the future is going to hold, but all of these incremental choices will determine the outcome of what the future of our planet is going to be. So yeah, it's very directly tied.
Okay, so what do you hope will be the situation in Aliso Canyon in 3 years? We can start with you.
Yeah, I hope that it's shut down a lot sooner than in 3 years. It's already been long enough, and I think that the hope that I have is that Governor Newsom has a lot of executive powers in order to make that transition happen faster. So yeah, I hope it's shut down, and I hope that after it's shut down, that people who are living in that community, like, feel the difference in their air and are able to enjoy the beautiful environment of the valley. Like, it's so beautiful with the canyons and the bike trails and everything. I hope that people, after it's shut down, people wake up out of this nightmare and are like, oh my God, why didn't we do this sooner?
What are you hoping for, Matt?
Well, I don't know where that 3-year number came from. It's already been 3 years too long. And this bears repeating. Whenever you hear methane or anyone says methane, that's not the problem. All those other constituents are the problem. So that needs to stop now, because all those chemicals, which Loraine mentioned earlier, they haven't even told us. That's what's making the people sick. So that facility needs to be shut down for that reason, as well as those other facilities in the SoCal gas facilities that are even in worse shape than this all around Los Angeles. So the green energy solution is not just going to be for the North Valley, it's for everybody. Shut down all these places, because the same stuff's coming out of all SoCal gas facilities and even all over the country.
Yeah, the other thing that's like really scary about like the components of the gas that was emitted was that, like, yeah, there is all of this uncertainty, but, you know, when I was knocking on doors for Food and Water Action in the CD12 special election, I was speaking with one constituent who had a radiation monitor, and I wasn't even really aware that because the natural gas is stored in this depleted oil field, it comes into contact with the natural radioactivity that's in the underneath the earth. So you know, this person had a radiation detector and was able to detect elevated levels of radiation that were above. Significantly above the EPA standard for what they consider to be safe.
So, Matt, is there any particular issue that inspires activism?
Well, in this case, when people know what's going on up there, they will get involved. This thing has been so suppressed in the news by SoCal Gas has their own media machine, and our own media doesn't cover it as much as they should, because there's really nothing to see. It's just gas. There's no homes burning, there's no things flowing downhill, there's no fires. So they've largely ignored it. And so when people know the problems that are going on up there and that this affects the entire San Fernando Valley, the health department said a 12-mile radius needs to be studied to find out how people were affected. That's pretty much all the San Fernando Valley. And that's the health department. So this stuff is affecting everybody to a greater or lesser extent, and people need to know that. And when they do, they'll get involved, because it's coming in their homes, their kids, their pets, their lives. So education is the main thing. Shows like this, it needs to be happening all the time.
Okay, that's all we got time for. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you again.
Thank you for watching On Point. You can follow us on social media at CSUN On Point. You can hear us on KCSN 88.5 FM on Sunday mornings at 5:30. You can watch us on Santa Clarita Valley Television on Sunday evenings at 5 and on LA 36 at 7 on Friday nights, and 2 on Saturday afternoon. For On Point, I'm Leslie Estrada.